You ever just look around and wonder why life is so, well, diverse? It's an amazing question, and the answer really boils down to one simple but incredibly powerful idea: variation. This is the foundation, the raw material for all the complexity and beauty we see in the natural world. So let's dive in and unpack how these incredible differences come to be and what shapes them.
I mean, just look at our own eyes. The sheer range of colors, from the deepest brown to a vibrant blue or a striking green, it's a perfect example of variation right there, just within our one species. And of course, it's not just us. You see it everywhere you look, in the unique patterns on snail shells, the different shapes of leaves on a tree, even the songs of birds. Life is just full of variety.
So this kind of begs a really big question, right? If all life shares common ancestors, why isn't everything, the same? Why this incredible explosion of differences? Well, the answer lies in this constant dance between all that variety and a powerful shaping force. Okay, so first, let's get a clear idea of what we're talking about. Variation is just the scientific term for all those slight differences between individuals of the same species. And this isn't just about looks, what scientists call morphology. It's about how our bodies work on the inside and even how we act. You can think of variation as the essential toolkit that life uses to solve problems and adapt. And that brings us to the other major player in this story: selection. If variation is the toolkit, selection is the force that decides which tools get used. It's this process, this filter, that determines which of those different traits are more likely to get passed on to the next generation. It's really the sculptor that carves the future of a species. Let's start with the big one, the most famous type of selection: natural selection. This is the one guided by the environment itself. It's the engine of evolution that Darwin described, a process that works slowly, steadily, and sometimes cruelly over countless generations. Now, natural selection isn't just a one-trick pony. It actually works in three main ways, which we can see pretty clearly with this beetle example. We're going to break down these three modes: stabilizing, directional, and disruptive selection, to see how each one pushes a population in a unique direction. First up, we have stabilizing selection. So this is what happens when an environment is pretty stable and things aren't changing much. In this situation, it's actually the average individuals who have the best shot at survival. Nature sort of trims away the outliers at both ends, favoring the middle ground and making the population as a whole more uniform. A really clear and very human example of this is birth weight. For thousands of years, babies born too small often struggled to survive. But babies born too large could create serious problems during childbirth for both themselves and their mothers. So the highest survival rates have always been for babies right in that sweet spot, around 3 to 4 kilograms. That is stabilizing selection in action. But what happens when the environment does change? Well, that's when you see directional selection kick in. This mode favors individuals at one extreme end of the spectrum. As you can see in the graph, the whole population starts to shift in one direction, towards whatever that new, more advantageous trait is. And here's the classic textbook example: the peppered moth. Before the Industrial Revolution in England, the lighter-colored moths blended in perfectly on lichen-covered trees. But when factories started pumping out soot that darkened the landscape, everything changed. Suddenly, the rare dark-colored moths were the ones with the camouflage advantage, and the whole population shifted dramatically to that darker color to avoid getting eaten by birds. And finally, we get to the most dramatic one: disruptive selection. This is what happens when individuals at both extremes have a survival advantage, but the ones in the middle are actually at a disadvantage. It's pretty wild. Over time, this can actually split a population into two distinct groups. These seedcracker finches are a perfect illustration. See, in their habitat, they were mostly two kinds of seeds available: really small, soft ones and really big, hard ones. So, finches with tiny beaks were great at eating the soft seeds, and finches with huge, powerful beaks were great at cracking the hard ones. But the birds with medium-sized beaks, they weren't really efficient at either job, so they struggled to find enough food and were selected against. Okay, but nature isn't the only game in town when it comes to selection. For thousands of years, we humans have been getting in on the action, deliberately guiding the evolution of other species to suit our own needs. And this is what we call artificial selection. So what's the difference? It really comes down to the who and the why. With natural selection, the environment is the agent doing the selecting, and the only goal is survival and reproduction.
But with artificial selection, we are the agents, and the goal is to produce specific traits that we want, whether that's tastier fruit, a dog with a friendlier personality, or prettier flowers. So, to put it formally, artificial selection is just the intentional breeding of plants and animals to favor certain traits we like. It's a much faster, much more goal-oriented process, where we're the ones deciding which individuals get to have offspring, all based on the characteristics we want to see more of.
A really powerful technique we use here is called outbreeding, which is just crossing different varieties. Let's walk through a simple story. Imagine a farmer wants to raise cattle that produce higher quality meat. They might start with two very different breeds that each have their own strengths.
So on one hand, you've got the Hereford Bull, a breed that's known for being really tough and hardy, and on the other, you have the Aberdeen Angus cow, which is famous for its fantastic meat quality. They're both great on their own, but what if you could combine their best features into one animal? Well, you do exactly that. The result of this cross is a hybrid that often shows something called hybrid vigor. This just means the offspring can end up healthier, stronger, and, in this case, produces even better meat than either of its parents. It's a fantastic example of creating something that's truly greater than the sum of its parts. And we see the same exact principle in agriculture. Take the oil palm. The Dura variety has this super thick shell that makes it hard to get the oil, which isn't great. The Piscifera variety has no shell, but it's often sterile. The solution? Cross them. You get the Tenera hybrid, which has the perfect combination: a thin, easy-to-process shell and a really high oil yield. We literally designed a better crop. So, as you can see, whether it's the slow, steady hand of nature or the fast, deliberate hand of humanity, selection is an unbelievably powerful force. It takes the randomness of variation and molds it into adaptation, incredible diversity, and constant change. All right, let's wrap this up with the key takeaways. First, and most importantly, variation is the raw material. Without it, there's no change. Second, natural selection is how life responds to the pressures of the environment. Third, artificial selection is kind of a shortcut, driven entirely by what we humans want. And finally, both of these processes are the fundamental forces that shape how life on this planet evolves. And that leaves us with a really powerful final thought. Every living thing on Earth, including you and me, is a product of these selective forces stretching back for billions of years. But now, with our understanding of genetics and artificial selection, we hold that power more directly than ever before. So the big question for our future really is, selection created us. What will we create with it?